There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. A dimension of sound.
For the 150th time, you are not getting out of here. Please let me finish the Count of Monte Cristo.
A dimension of sight.
No change at all.
What? I think I look fine.
A dimension of mind. Next stop, the Twilight Zone.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Fifth Dimension, a Twilight Zone podcast. I am your host, as always, Nick, and we're here to talk about one of the supposedly greatest episodes. We'll get into whether it is or not of the Twilight Zone. Once again, I'm joined by Triv from Trivial Theater. What is going on, Triv?
But besides weird twitchy mouth problems, not doing too bad.
She's staring me down. Apparently, her eyes refuse to blink. She glued them open. She's like, do, 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 do.
Hey, I gotta have some fun.
I know, right?
And if gluing your eyes open doesn't constitute fun, I'm not sure what does.
I know. You've been on a bender of Red Bull and psychotic nature of the ever since Jacob was on. She's like, I've been taking all these blue pills instead of the red pills. I don't know what's going on. So so as always, if you want to find our content, you can find it, of course, on my channel for the time being. So I decided to actually set up a YouTube channel for this video and this actual podcast. Like I said earlier, like I've said before in the past, we do now have a audio version of this podcast, which is on Apple and Google and all those things. I think it's on SoundCloud maybe, or whatever, Stitcher, whatever they have out there in the world. And I didn't mention this in the beginning of the last episode, but we mentioned at the end. Once again, Triv, your friend who created the artwork for your avatar, I guess you could say, is in the middle of some health issues right now, and I just wanted to plug it before we start. Can you talk about that a little bit real quick?
Oh, absolutely. So the person that does my avatar, really amazing person and a fellow MST3K fan. She's dealing with some pretty severe medical stuff, and she's got a GoFundMe as well as a shop where she sells merch. Both places will get you all the money will go back to her. Her artwork is amazing and it's fun, and there's shirts and hoodies and stickers and basically whatever you can buy that's merch. But check it out. It's a great time to go check out stuff for the holidays and just Halloween and all that good stuff. So go check out her designs. Links are down below. And thank you very much, Nick, for doing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll put them in the descriptions as always. I did it for the last video. I'll put it in for this. I'll keep putting it in there until she eventually stops putting all that good stuff. So, so today is a good day. We are on our 8th episode of this series of this Twilight Zone run through, and we're going to be talking about an episode that is considered one of the greatest episodes of all time, has considered one of the greatest endings of all time to a possibly TV show in general. It's a series. It's an episode that was based off a short story by Lynn Venable, I guess is how you pronounce her name, which I didn't know was actually based off it, which is pretty cool. And this episode is called Time Enough at Last, of course. It's directed by John Brahm, written by Rod Serlings. It's production code 173-3614, which means it was the 14th episode produced. And it's kind of interesting because this ends up being the 8th episode, but it was the 14th episode produced. So I wonder, I'll ask you, Triv, I was curious, do you think this episode they were so high on, they were like, we need to get this out there quick so we can, gain that footing and gain the television market, I guess. Is that what it's called? I can never remember.
Nielsen numbers,
yes,
or whatever. I'm not sure if that was thrown back. I'm sure it probably was, but honestly, I think it was not 100.
Yeah. No, I say I think it was in some form or something like that.
Yeah. I'm not honestly sure why this one came out in the order that it did. It's always hard to tell, what's going to hit and what's not going to hit. I mean, for all we know, they looked at 16 millimeter Shrine and said, hey, this is going to be a total banger.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they thought.
Oh yeah, 100%, right? But I mean, whatever the reasons beforehand, it was considered to be Rod Serlings' personal favorite. It was rated number 25 on TV Guide's 100 most memorable moments of television. There's the great debate over, what the message of this is, especially in a modern connotation. So
Yeah.
it's that there's so much, there's a lot to unpack with this episode, and it's considered one of the best for a reason. But we're certainly, when we get into the discussions about it, I think we're definitely gonna find both the good and the bad about it.
Yeah, it's crazy because Burgess Meredith is a really famous actor, like really famous, even at the time this episode came out. And of course, he got an Oscar nomination. I don't think he won, but I think he got an Oscar nomination for, of course, playing in Rocky. I can't remember what. Do you remember what his character name was? Was it Mick or something like that?
It was, yeah, because he said, "Cut me, Mick."
Yeah, yeah. And the thing that the really funny thing about this episode, everybody knows this episode, at least for the ending, is Burgess Meredith. It says in the book, I was looking just to double check, but Burgess Meredith was an individual that even up to his death, which I think, was he still alive? Yeah, he passed in 97. Up to his death, when he would be approached by someone, this would be the thing. They wouldn't even talk about Rocky or any like the obsolete man. This moment at the very end of this episode in this story would be the one they always approached him about, which always caught him off by surprise. Because me personally, and I love this episode to death, even though I have issues with it, I think the Obsolete Man is a much better story, just based on the Orwellian, 1948 or whatever, 1978 story stuff.
Yeah.
Or 84, thank you. Style story. But it's just because of what happens to Henry Bemis's character at the end is why it's so memorable. But let's actually go into the early stages of, like, before you watch this episode, which I'm assuming you've seen this episode before.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think everybody has.
Oh yeah, like you watch any marathon on Sci-Fi Channel, Twilight, or USA. Like, this is one of the first ones or one of the last ones they show because it's so well known. I mean, it is definitive. I mean, you look back, Futurama did their own sort of ripoff of this called The Scary Door, and the episode that they spoofed on was this episode. The guy, let's see, he loses his glasses, but he can still read large print since his eyesight wasn't as bad as he thought it was. And then his eyes fall out, his hands fall off, and he screams, his tongue falls off, and then his head falls off. And then the end thing is cursed by his own hubris, despite the fact that he has no hands, eyes, face, or anything. So
that's so funny.
It is. It totally is. And it's one of those great moments that gets, being so famous, people spoof it left and right. And I'm sure there's all kinds of great versions.
Yeah, I'm sure The Simpsons at some point did too. But going into this episode, fresh off the take or whatever, let's just say you went fresh off the take, like you've never seen this episode before, which we know you haven't or have already. What was your overall? I mean, going in as a reviewer, did you go in it knowing that you were going to like it, or did you expect to find some fault with it as a now critic of the episode? Now you're going into these episodes as a critical eye. Did you think you were going to go into it as somebody who was still going to love it, or did you think you were going to find so much fault with it that maybe it doesn't hold up as well as you thought you did?
I mean that the critical eye does make a difference, but I think for as good as this episode is, I do think that you can look at it even just from the outside and go, because I mean, what movie do we not walk away from and go, I really like that movie, but this happened, that happened. They kind of stretched disbelief. This was too easy. Where the hell did that come from? They met with a challenge and regarded it was a substantial challenge, but like the response to it, the absolute, just, oh God, I'm done for. There's no hope. I mean, it goes a little goofy, and whether that was meant or not, I'm not sure.
The thing about this episode that I went into it thinking is, I remember seeing this episode many, many times. I probably watched this episode last year for all I know. And I always remember that there's always that middle section, which really kind of, you have to suspend disbelief, and we'll talk about it as we talk about the episode. But going in with a critical eye, which unfortunately I do now as a reviewer for YouTube, and you do as well, there are some seams that seem to start unseaming themselves as you watch it. And that was the one worry I was going to go into, is I was going to find so many faults with it, which I didn't find as many faults as I thought I was going to, but went into it thinking this is going to be an episode that is so revered, so beloved, that we're going to post this episode and we're going to get lambasted for, giving our honest thoughts and opinions about. And I'm not worried about that as much, but I'm worried about the fact that I was going to go into this really, it's the same thing of watching any episode of your favorite series. You feel like you're worried that you're not going to like it as much as you did. And it doesn't do that as much in this episode, but like I said, when you like something like Obsolete Man more, it suffers a little bit. So
oh yeah, well, and I think that's the more you watch something, you can love something to death. Like I love Star Wars, but do I have the same like giddiness that I had watching it, when I was 20? No, I don't. I mean, it's you move on to other things, you still hold that nostalgia, but it's oftentimes the nostalgia that holds it in place for you. It's the way that episode made you feel at that time. To some extent. You can always look at the art and say, you know what, this was well written. It had some very funny moments. There are places where it lets it down, but you can kind of put those aside because of the way that it makes you feel.
Yeah, it's also interesting. I'm reading through a couple pages. I looked through the book and stuff like that. The last couple episodes, including The Lonely and Where Is Everybody? I don't know. I can't remember every episode in this first season, but there seems to be a running theme about loneliness in
massively.
these episodes. There seems to be a thing about how we look at ourselves in the world that is presented. And Henry Bemis's character is a very interesting and odd character to place in the world, because he's so sad and so looked down upon that what happens to him is like, no wonder why he's going to do what he does. But I don't know, there's something interesting about what Rod Serling has to say about man and his view on society, and his kind of logical thinking about how we always feel like we have to be around people and around situations, and when those situations are taken from us, it causes us to collapse in our own petard, I guess you could say. I don't know if that's the right word, but
you fall on your own petard.
Yeah. I mean, do you agree with that? Do you have anything that you want to add to that?
This one is hard for me. Like I agree, there's definitely whether you're looking at this one, the Lonely, a lot of those, that a lot of them focus around that. Even something like the 16mm Shrine, there is a loneliness to that. She misses the people that she used to know.
Right.
But this one strikes me as weird because, especially from not that there's a moral per se for this one, but the thing that he's doing is something that you should do more of. Like, there's nothing wrong with reading, and being that every place he goes, and obviously work isn't the place to read, but like the home life, you talk through balance of, okay, I'm going to read for a couple of hours and we'll go play cards or whatever. But then he gets that and it's taken away from him. And it's like, he wasn't a bad guy. He didn't like deserve what he got. I don't know. Like, I'm torn on the ending of this and kind of what the meaning is. And then you look at like modern day stuff that you could relate to this, which obviously wasn't done at the time, but there's a lot of that stuff too.
Well, that's the thing. Like, how could you even do this segment or this episode today? I guess if there's a bomb and maybe a cell phone or something like that, but I don't know. This feels like and we'll talk about it, but this feels like an episode where it really feels of its time, and it would be really hard to do because
See, I disagree with you a little bit on that. Like, and again, so I'm seeing, so this is going to hit on two sides of sort of the same thing. Like when he was sitting there with this book at the open in the bank, all I could think was, oh my God, that's like every single student or like young person with a cell phone. You spend time looking at that, but the difference is it's a book, which, was supposed to be good and great and reading is good, versus a cell phone, social media, all that kind of stuff. But then you go to like the fact that you kind of like lose yourself in a phone, and you have your online people, but you're still like isolating yourself to some extent. The world ends and you're all by yourself, so it's like it's sort of that same thing of being alone, just a different kind of isolation.
Right.
I mean, that's it's two different messages. Obviously it doesn't work together, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's
like I think
guess
you
that's
could
true.
I guess what I'm trying to say is I think you could make this work one way or the other, or some variation on this story, especially with cell phone. You
Yeah,
lose it, and all of a sudden you're like, what do I do? I'm alone
right.
because I want to be alone, but I'm alone and I don't have the people that I was with online.
That's true. That's true. I mean, we saw just recently, or it'd be like a couple weeks from now, already a couple weeks ago, but we saw what happened with Facebook and how
Yeah.
like that completely collapsed the economy. It seemed like, and
Oh yeah, the
you
stock
know,
market, or
same thing.
the stocks for Facebook went through the floor.
Yeah, yeah. I think Mark Zuckerberg like lost $6 billion or something.
He's got 6 billion to spare.
So another thing about this episode, before I get into the opening narration, is it's an episode that was based off like a very short story. I think it was like 6 pages or something.
Oh, wow.
Not 6 pages, but it was like a really like 20-page
Right.
story or whatever. Not very long. And it was not considered like the greatest story, but Rod Serling took it over and kind of beefed it up as we see. I mean, it's not it's longer than 20 pages, as you can
Oh,
tell
yeah.
from the story.
Well, and I think the average script was like 35 pages for
Right.
a Twilight Zone episode.
Right, which makes sense because unless there's a lot of the episodes, there's not a lot of dialogue. I wouldn't be surprised if Where's Everybody was like 10 pages long, because there's not a lot there's not a lot going into it. But they talk about, and I'm reading this from the book, but they talk about how when he beefed it up, he gave characters like Henry Bemis a much more interesting arc. And I'm just going to read this dialogue real quick. It says, Bemis, this is like in script form. Bemis, Mr. Chester, have you ever read David Copperfield? Miss Chester, how's that? Bemis, it's a wonderful book. There's this poor little fellow, and his father has passed away, and his mother has married the miserable man called Murdstone. Isn't that a villainous name? Murdstone. Well, this Murdstone has a sister called Jane. Miss Chester, Mr. Bemis, you shortchanged me again. You owe me $1 more. See, there's only 24 here, and there should be 25. Bemis, oh, I'm terribly sorry, Miss Murder. I mean, Miss Chester. And that's the kind of stuff that wasn't in Lynn Venable's story, was like these character moments of making this character a much more relatable character, because you and I, we both admit, are very nerdy people in our own right, books and all that good stuff. And this character is very relatable because it's honestly, to me personally, as the story plays out and when he's like where we get to the eventual conclusion, it's a very nightmarish scenario for anybody like us.
Oh yeah.
Or anybody that's very nerdy in general, which was become a very populous thing now.
Mhm.
And it'd be scary to have something like this. It'd be like me and not being able to listen to a podcast or a movie ever again. It's like the worst case scenario. Or I'm not even worried about my family. I'm telling you, I'm worried about music. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, reading something like that, I mean, do you agree it's like, for any of us, it's the worst case scenario?
Oh yeah.
Or nightmarish.
I mean,
a fever dream.
You lose. I mean, look at what happens. Like we lost cell phone coverage here last year because there was this massive storm that rolled through and it took out a bunch of cell towers, and the internet was down, like landline, or not landlines, but like the normal internet was down because a cable had been hit. So it was like literally 3 days without any kind of internet, and you couldn't like spotty phone reception to speak of, and it was crazy. Like, I mean, yeah, back in the day, landlines were a thing that it sucked not to have, but repairs happened relatively quick. This is like everything was out.
Yeah, this is like my current Xfinity plan. I'm looking at you, Comcast, and every time I turn around, you have my system broke down, so I have no internet. Yeah, I wake up in nightmares all the time about
justice for Nick.
Exactly. First world problems, I'm telling you.
Yeah. I will say though, and we'll get more into it, but like talking about the humor in here, there is actually some pretty great like one-liners.
I agree. And I think that works well with not only Rod Serling, who you can tell something. I think 16mm Shrine has a much more deep meaning behind it with like Hollywood. But I think to me personally, I think Rod Serling thinks this episode is fun because he's able to tell a story about our worst fears, our personal fears, how we view things, and how we are unable to accept the things that we can't control. And It's really, the dangers of relying. Actually, it says it right here: dangers of reliance upon technology and the difference between solitude and loneliness. And I think I think he always enjoyed talking about that kind of stuff because it's really, he can take it any way he wants, and he's able to, it talks about in the book about how he's very reserved with the hitchhiker, but he can be unreserved and kind of unhinged in this episode and kind of put the pedal to the metal and give this poor guy the worst ending he could ever have. So
you want to know who's unhinged in this book? His freaking wife. Holy shit.
Yeah, thank God she's gone. Which actually is played remarkably awesome by Jacqueline deWit. So
oh yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing with these books or these shows. They pick people that always do a really good job. Like, there are very few bad performances.
Yeah, we'll find some, I'm sure.
I have no
I'm
doubt.
sure we'll find some real bad. But even I joke with you all the time. I don't necessarily hate 16mm Shrine. I think the performances are actually pretty good.
Bullshit. I'm gonna get you a t-shirt that says I abhor the 16mm Shrine. Ask me why.
I'll probably wear it too. I'll definitely wear it on some videos.
But the Ask Me Why will be on the back, so people are going to come up to you and be like, so why do you hate the 16mm Shrine? Also, what is a 16mm Shrine? Also, what is 16mm?
Oh God, don't get me started on that one. Remember, people, you need to watch the Twilight Zone. I've had that. What is the Twilight Zone?
Exactly. Oh, is that the one with Jordan Peele?
Oh God. Oh man.
Okay, we've been pissing around enough. We should probably get into the actual show.
I know. I was worried that this episode wasn't going to be long enough at last.
Oh man, this is going to be as long as the one with Jacob, and we're just because we're tangenting. He left us to be tangenting even more. Damn you, Jacob.
He's left his imprints on us.
Oh God. I don't want. Anyways, I like Jacob, but I don't want his imprints on me. Oh God.
Oh God. All five imprints.
Oh shit. Had to go there.
All right, steering back on course. Stay on target. So this episode is directed by John Brahm. This is his first of 12 episodes he would go on to direct there for the series. Like I said, stars Burgess Meredith, of course, his first of 4 episodes. Jacqueline deWit's in this, and of course Vaugh Taylor, all famous actors in their own right. So like Tales from the Crypt, as we are starting to see a lot of famous actors, a lot of famous directors directing the series. And the opening narration starts right after Henry Bemis is introduced. He's reading David Copperfield. He's sitting at the bank, not really paying attention, or he's with what's her face?
Mrs. Murderhorn.
Yeah, Mrs. Murderhorn.
I don't know if she's named.
Mrs. Chester. But Mrs. Chester, he literally tries to convince her to read David Copperfield, and then, like I said, he calls her Miss Murder and stuff like that, and he forgets to give her an extra $1, which is a crime back in the day because it's worth a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
And
she shouldn't be called Mrs. Chester. She'd be called Mrs. Big Chester because she's got a big chest. Yeah, exactly.
Or the woman from Gremlins. I wonder if that's where the woman from Gremlins came from.
Possibly. Weirder things have gone down.
But
right after, she's just insistent about her $1.
Exactly. She's not trying to take people's homes away from them. So
yes.
So anyways, right after this segment, right after realizing what he did, the bank manager Carsville pops up. But before that, we get the opening narration. It says, "Witness Mr. Henry Bemis, a character member in the Fraternity of Dreams, a bookish little man whose passion is the printed page, but who is conspired against by a bank president and a wife with a world full of tongue cluckers," very 50s.
Tongue cluckers. Wow.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to start saying that. And the unrelenting hands of the clock. But in just a moment, Mr. Bemis will enter a world without bank presidents or wives or cluckers or clocks or anything else. He'll have a world all to himself without anyone. So Rod Serlings is just giving you the whole entire first act of this movie in that narration. Do you agree?
I would say so, but you know what? I don't know. I don't think you would necessarily need narrative for this. Like, you can go into it and he's reading David Copperfield and you're like, hey, you know what? I think this guy likes to read and doesn't like to do his job.
Exactly.
But having said that, in lieu of not having the ability of having a 3-act structure, that does kind of set things up, to get you where you need to go to some
Right.
extent.
Right.
Not all the time. Like, obviously in The
Well,
Lonely, we didn't really get that. Like,
we
that
didn't get
one
very
could have
many
done with
places in
like a
that one.
mid. Yeah. I mean, that one could have used like a mid, not that the mid story narration is always great. This one has one. I think it could have been used there and done to better effect.
Yeah. I think the difference of the structure between those two episodes like night and day. It's pretty
Oh,
crazy.
yeah. Very much.
So we get the bank teller, Carsville, Vaugh Taylor. He is a very fun man to deal with, a very stern individual. And he brings Mr. Bemis to his office. Bemis is a guy that likes to read. I love if you agree, but I love how he puts the next window sign on on the thing so he can read. And the manager's like right behind him.
He's trying to be honest about it at least.
Yeah. It's those little touches that make it so appealing. But
very much.
So he's called to his office and he's basically lambasted, yelled at by his manager Carsville, who calls him a reader. And I do this. Oh my god, a reader! No.
Like, he said, "You are not an efficient employee. You are a reader."
Oh my god, it's like in Joe versus the Volcano when Joe, has the epiphany and everybody's like, "What? That's not right." It's a really 50s segment. It'd be like us today with, like you said, with the cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta get off your cell phone. You're a tech head or whatever you want to call a cell phony or whatever they call people nowadays. Yeah, cell phony.
You're a social media influencer.
You're a social media whore.
Oh wow. Strong words.
But the funny thing about this is Carsville goes, or Bemis starts explaining how his wife won't let him read and how he's like, sometimes I just read the labels on the packages to have something to read. And Carsville goes, "That's a smart woman." I'm like, "You son of a bitch."
I loved how in the next one, like during camp or doing I think it was on election day, he said, "You were reading the pins of people or campaign pins of people that came in, and that young lady was not very impressed with you reading her pin." And it's just like, I see what you're doing there, Rod Serling, you cheeky bastard.
Oh my god, the subtle nature of what Rod Serling was putting in his scripts that I don't even know if the censors got is amazing.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I just imagine some old biddy just like, "Oh well, it wasn't very nice to not let him finish reading the pin," and it's like, okay.
But he sends Bemis out of the office, and of course Bemis like secretly tries to look over at the pamphlet, whatever's on Carsville's desk, and I started laughing. I'm like this poor guy just can't have anything. And then we transfer over to the one scene he has with his wife in the entire episode, and this woman, this wife, this person is I hate to say it, very much a stereotype of 50s women.
She's got to stick up her ass.
Yeah, it's a little problematic if you want to talk about it in this day and age, because it feels
she's got to stick up her ass.
Yeah, she does. But I have a feeling if this episode was done today, it would gender swap, and you would have a asshole husband and bookish nerdish wife, which is what I think would happen. But
well, I mean, you could do the whole nerd, like you could do the whole nerd culture thing, and I mean, not even because there's a lot of husbands and wives that nag their significant other because of you get too many Funko Pops or you spend too much time reading comics or whatever. I mean, video games, name it.
Yeah, I know some people, no names, but I know some people that have that situation, and it's depressing. It really is. It's like, the one thing that makes us, like, especially in this day and age, so kind of awesome in a lot of ways is there's so many different kind of ideas. There's so many different kind of cool, nerdy things. You could be a fan of Star Wars, you could be a fan of Star Trek, or you could be a fan of Twilight Zone, you could be a fan of this, that, whatever it is, and everybody has their own passion, and it's not necessarily different, and we all love the same type of thing, but not necessarily the same type of thing. And to have this, wife who, I'm assuming not all women in the 50s were like this.
Oh, of
To
course
have,
not.
yeah, but to have this wife just, she chastises him for reading. All he does is, I think he's talking, I can't remember what he's talking about to his wife, but his wife is like super upset. I'm like, oh my God, what is wrong with it? I'm like, did Rod Serling just get chastised for his wife because he works too hard? I mean, like, what is going on? And I
Well,
just, God,
I was just gonna say, and here's the thing, like it's all about balance. Like if he
yeah,
read too much, you know what, just say, hey, let's, it's and not that that's going to be addressed here because it is, a very fanciful episode of a very out there TV show. But
yeah,
like, because what she was saying, hey, you know what, we need to conversate. We need to talk to people. To conversate is important. You need that interaction. But to take it
yeah,
away
true, yeah,
100%, but to take it away 100% from the poor guy, I mean, obviously it's a story of balance and neither one of them are
yeah,
balanced. She's chastising him for wanting to read these amazing poems, and she actually goes so far as to like not just, she found the book that he had hidden because he hides away a book, and she finds it on him. Every single
yep.
page is like marked, and it's not just marked, it's like 20 stroke marks down the entire page, and it's like, damn, that's like a 200-page book. When did you have time to do this?
Well, no, it's on top of that, the story is a little bit about like addiction too, like, being addicted to something too much. And,
Yeah.
I have this problem too, where, I get so involved in my YouTube channels that sometimes I forget to converse with my roommates and people I know. And, there, like you said, there is that balance where Bemis has to understand that his wife has needs. And even though I think she's a little too strong-willed and strong-headed and kind
She's
of,
got to
as you
stick
say,
up her
stick up the
ass.
ass. Yeah. But he also needs his time away. Like
Oh
this
yeah.
is like a very controlling woman that won't let him do anything outside of being the subservient man or whatever.
Yeah. He is a
The
timid little husband that you'd see
yeah,
in 50s things. I mean, it's a very like
exactly,
that aspect of it is incredibly the Meek husband.
yeah. And
Actually, I gotta say, it's been a while since I've seen this one. Like I've
mhm.
seen it many times, but it's been a bit. I was actually surprised, like when you saw him and you knew what he was going home to. I thought,
Right,
like, normally with this stereotype, you'll see like a little tiny dude, and the wife is like, massive. She's super tall and super built, like she's very big. And that to see her as a relatively prim and proper, you know, woman, just super tall, it's like, what's going on? You were supposed to be like
yeah,
a giant of a woman, and you're not. Like that's what you
right.
always saw with those stereotypes. Like any cartoon of the era, any movie of the era, any TV show of the era had that contradiction.
Yeah, it's weird too. I don't even know how to like explain what I think about that, but it really has an interesting sense of like it doesn't matter the person, the size, the strength,
No, absolutely
if
not.
you can, yeah, if you can control the person. But like you said, he hides books in underneath couches, and it's funny because he lifts up the couch and he's like looking for it and
And it's
hides
not
it
just
in
under
his,
the cushion, it's like up underneath the back cushion of this thing, which
yeah.
didn't look like it came off. So
And it's just such a depressing thing. You should never have to hide who you are from somebody. But
yeah.
that might be a little bit of my main problem is this guy. It feels like he's not willing to stand up for himself, and even in the end, it feels like he's just constantly being berated and pushed down. And yeah, kind of moving on from that, we have the wife and all her, but she's only in it for like 2 or 3 minutes, so it's like kind of
Yeah.
a small thing, but it actually quite resonates for something that's not very long, which is
Oh yeah.
pretty impressive writing.
She's
That's my
memorable.
problem. Yeah, that's my problem with The Lonely is I love Alicia's character, but she's this woman, this Jacqueline deWit character, I think is a little more memorable than Alicia's character
Oh yeah.
in a part. Yeah, it's really strange. I don't get it. And
But don't you think too with that, like Alicia's character was sweet and basically just an
mhm,
extension. Like she is literally just an extension of Corey's character. In this
yeah,
case,
yeah,
you have a very, very straightforward, you know, prominent, like someone that is boisterous about how they feel. They don't hold back. She's a little bit of a bitch. I mean, she has more traits that make her memorable. Like you could have a super
right.
kind character that is super memorable too. But Alicia she's not really there really. We don't know her. We
Yeah.
don't know what she likes because she likes the same things that Corey does.
Yeah, which is why I was complaining so much about it last week. I'm like, you have this character that you're really not giving much dimension to, and you could have just, the easiest way to correct that is just have her be in the beginning part of the episode and then play out the way it plays out at the end, and maybe not even admit the fact that he's a prisoner. Just you just said, here's a guy in the middle of the desert, here's his wife and husband, maybe they're on whatever it is, and that's what I like about Jacqueline deWitt's character is it gives us a sympathy for a character that may be a little too I'll be totally honest. No, I mean, I think Henry Bemis might be a little too unsympathetic just for the simple fact he never stands up for himself. And as we see after the H bomb, which I'll talk about in a second, there's things that he's doing that are a little too cowardice, I guess you could say.
I think that he was beat down. Like you can see, like every time, like with everything he does when it relates to anything that doesn't surround reading, when he's not in the vault reading, when he's not like reading at his at his station thing, like the man has been beaten to hell by his boss, by his wife, even by the customer. And not that if you were short money, I would say, hey, you need to get your money, but he sees everything that's not reading as invading in on his world.
Right.
So,
and Bemis is similar to George from It's a Wonderful Life. The what's his James Stewart, George, it's like a famous name. Anyways, James Stewart's character, where he's gotten to a point where he's so especially in the later part where he's so disheveled, where he's
so many times.
Yeah, and he's willing to do something really sad and depressing to get out of it. But we'll talk about it here in a second, which is my major issue. I understand why he does it, but I still think it's a little too dramatic. But from here on out, it's just Henry Bemis's character. Yeah, we see some people in the actually, I don't even think we see anybody in the bank, but
no.
Henry Bemis puts the sign, of course, back on the thing so he can go take his break down in the vault, which is to his benefit, I guess. I don't know, but he's doing it very sneakily. He's like walking down like a robber or something like that with the little hat, the hamburger or something like that. He walks down the vault and he's just like looking around. He's like, as he's slowly closing it, and he's like this? Exactly like that. Yes, exactly. But he goes into the vault and he starts to read a book, and some reason he finishes the book. Like I think he finishes the book or something like that, or maybe that's part of the after the H bomb stuff. But he's sitting there, and all of a sudden they do like a backwards reverse shot of the watch. Basically the book opens and the watch breaks and the H bomb goes off, which they say in the book they wanted to stay away from the actual detonation because they wanted to not have to use stock footage, which is what they used back in the day. Is a lot of stock footage of the H bomb and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, and you're not that far removed from the actual event, so
yeah, and it knocks him out.
Yeah,
exactly. But it knocks him out basically, and that's the end of the first act. So with that said, I mean, we've been kind of talking a little bit about the kind of the thrust of how the episode begins, but after watching that first segment, the first act of this story, what was your overall opinion? Do you think it's a strong first act? Do you think it has a lot of issues? I know you, before we start recording, you said you had some issues with this actual episode.
Was it having to do second half that I had issues?
Oh, okay, that's fine.
But I will. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was saying, what do you think of the first act?
Yeah, I think it was excellent. I think that you get it does a good job of kind of explaining things. I think, unlike a lot of episodes, I think the commercial break falls damn near perfect. Like it leaves you with a cliffhanger. I actually really liked the idea that the book opens and then the watch breaks. I'm guessing that was supposed to be like, the sonic boom before the bomb goes off. And it was, that aspect of it was cool. There was some funny little bits between him and his wife. Like he says, you're whatever she says about him being a bad husband. And he asks how many husbands she has, and so that was kind of cute.
Forgot about that. Yeah.
The campaign button thing was cute. The idea of you're a reader. And the idea that obviously it wasn't meant at the time, but the fact that Serling could, the way that Bemis was reading the book was kind of the way that people would do with phones today. And obviously that's not the point of this particular episode, but I thought that was really interesting.
And I mean, I don't blame him for going down that vault. I go down that vault too. just to be away from people. I mean, it's nice and quiet. And so yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it's a really strong first act. It's definitely an act that, you know, I would actually, to me personally, would love to see more of, just because I was so invested with what was going on. I think it would be, you know, interesting to see more of this world, more of who he is, and, you know, get a much better perspective. But for 10 minutes, what they were able to do and pull off is actually quite fantastic.
Oh yeah.
We learn everything we need to know about Bemis. We learn everything about his world. We learn what he is, who he is, and how this world operates. And as you said, you know, we'll talk about it. I think the second half is where it starts to, you know, it starts to fall apart a little bit, but it's still very visceral in a lot of aspects. But
Oh yeah.
so the second act opens and Henry Bemis wakes up, and let's just say the H-bomb didn't do a very good job.
It was
Because
inconsistent. It's like a tornado.
yeah,
It leaves this standing and then it knocks over everything else.
exactly. It's like the H-bomb went, not there, right there. It's so funny. It's like, I understand in a time where they were worried about this. I mean, this was close to the start of the Cold War and all that stuff. You want to be a little protective of showing some really true dimensional or really true horrifying things. But I think they go a little too far in this segment, because he's literally walking around the bank. The bank manager is on the ground underneath a bunch of rubble, and there's a dictograph. I think it's a dictograph or whatever it is, whatever
dictaphone.
they use back in the dictaphone.
Yep.
And you know for a fact, watching H-bombs and how they operate, there would be no way this guy would be here. I don't even think Henry Bemis would be here, but you have to have his story play out and you have to suspend disbelief. But as we're aware, the bank vault is somewhat structure proof and is somewhat in a good shape for, you know, an H-bomb going off. And he walks out and it's complete devastation, but there are some buildings and stuff like that. But what was is this where you start kind of like having problems with the episode? I guess I started out there.
Not really at this point. Like, again, there's some suspension of disbelief. Like, I guess I look at like The Lonely and how they do space travel and how like it's the, you know, there's still sun out and everything. I mean, you could say the same thing about like Marvel movies. Like, why didn't the Hulk show up for, you know, this episode? Why didn't, you know, whatever, you know, there is, like you say, there has to be some suspension of disbelief, and you're still working within the confines of, you know, your episode. You still have to make it realistic for the people that are watching it at that time. So they wanted to show destruction, but they didn't want to go over the top. I'm sure for censors as much as anything.
Right. And I was gonna say, I don't expect them to show like
no,
rotting corpses or anything. But I was
why
just
not? That would have been fun.
Yeah, I agree. I would have loved it, but you know, for people that are very, you know, PC and just like, oh my god, my child dies, you know, that type of thing. It's just like it's just a little goofy in me personally. It's a little goofy. I get what they're doing. I understand what they're doing, but I guess I have to go into a 50s mindset and realize that, you know, they only have
matters.
Yeah, exactly. But we see this world, for the most part, it's completely destroyed. There's some burned trees and some buildings that are somewhat structured, which is a little more believable, you know, so on and so forth. And, you know, as he's looking around, this is when the second time they've ever done this, where Rod Serlings writes a middle narration. And, you know, a lot of the, let me see if make sure.
There are 4 episodes where they had mid-toned narration.
Well, no, I didn't want. I just want to make sure I don't forget anything before I go into the middle narration. Okay, so yeah, it's like right after the dictograph stuff, the dictaphone. And Rod Serlings writes as Henry Bemis is kind of, you know, calling out to people to make sure they're alive. He says, seconds, minutes, hours, they crawl by on hands and knees for Mr. Henry Bemis, who looks for a spark in the ashes of a dead world. A telephone connected to nothingness, a neighbor bar, a movie, a baseball diamond, a hardware store, the mailbox at what was once his house and now is rubble. They lie at his feet as battered monuments to what was but is no more. Mr. Henry Bemis on an 8-hour tour of a graveyard. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think he wrote this because people may have been confused about what was going on? Maybe they didn't understand?
I think he probably just to maybe give some sense of time. There was the sports store, the bank, his house, and the grocery store. Really, like that's really all we see as far as actual buildings. Like, I think most people would get it, but you know, if you're young or you don't, I mean, I would say it's probably just a, hey, in case you missed it, the world exploded. You know,
right? Because you know there was only 4 episodes, but I think that's what he was trying to aim for, was just to
I
make
think
sure
so.
everyone was in check. I mean, I don't think he did this for his health. I think he did it to kind of prove, make a point where here's a guy who's been wandering for hours, who feels loneliness and stuff like that, who feels, battered down and stuff like that.
Right.
And
I mean, and at that point in time, I do think exposition was quite a thing. I don't think that's, but yeah, just to give the sense of timing, I think it was probably more than anything what it was meant to do.
Exactly. But for the most part, this episode up till the very end is about Bemis trying to make sense of this new world. He's very upset that he's still alive, but he somehow, as we're going to talk about, he starts finding things very conveniently. He finds, as you talked about earlier before we recorded, he finds cans of food that are not irradiated or destroyed, and that is the first of many things that happen, and we'll go through each one. But when you saw this happen, when you saw he found food, what was you did you kind of laugh about it, or did you kind of find, did you did you like shake your head in disbelief? Like, what did you think about that?
Again, I think you have to look at it as it was a point of the story. It was important to have it in there, but the overall, like, it didn't need to be like end all be all. He eats food and a second later he dies. It's a piece of the plot, but it's not meant to like be the thing that does him in.
Right, because if you ever have read the book The Road or watched the movie, the main plot of the story is two people trying to survive in a world that's completely collapsing upon itself, that has literally nobody in it. And I feel like they try to do that here, especially like the can of food. He also finds a couch, which is really strange, and he decides he's going to sleep in that couch, which may be very highly irradiated, or I don't know what was in this couch, but he talks about this whole thing, and then he's on a couch sleeping, and maybe tomorrow will be a better day or something. But that's another thing. Like, he finds a couch. Like,
yep.
Okay.
What got me even more than that was the fact that he was smoking a cigarette. He falls asleep and the cigarette falls into the jacket. It's like, okay, he's dead because his jacket catches fire, if nothing else. I mean, hell, by stepping outside into that environment, he was already irradiated at that point. Like, he was already soaking up all of that stuff. So yes, it was the point, but it was more like things to get him through. So, because people are going to ask, oh, well, did he eat? Did he sleep? And other science facts, la la la.
Yeah, and the other funny thing is, in this world, I mean, maybe he was knocked out for a few hours, who knows how long, but I think you would also see this mushroom cloud still popping out in the distance, which I think is still, I mean, if I remember right, which I'm not a scientist or anything like that about how H-bombs work, but I'm pretty sure the mushroom cloud stayed around for quite a while.
I would
the
think
after
so.
effects of everything.
Well, and depending upon how far away it was, I mean, we have no concept of any of those things, so we can.
Which is a little bit of a problem, because you're not really given much. Which I understand they want to keep it more personal, but you have to give us a little bit of
like Walking Dead. Walking Dead is a great example. Like they talk about food once, but then after that it goes away being a problem. Or again, Marvel movies. How many times did Iron Man or Thor or whoever not show up because it would have ruined the story. So there is, like I say, it's that balance between suspension of disbelief and the fact that, okay, this is a massive gaping plot hole.
Well, I mean, that's what they like. You go back to Walking Dead before they came and did the whole Negan thing. It's really interesting about that series, which is not even really about the zombies, but the zombies are there and they kill the zombies and so on and so forth. But like you said, it's much more of just a story where these things are not, necessarily at the forefront. It makes it for a much better product. Yeah. But like I said, when Negan came in, the whole story fell apart. But
yeah,
exactly.
But yeah, I mean, if you had where they were only, and regarded this is a completely different thing, but if you had it where they were focused on finding food every single episode, it'd get boring pretty quick. But yeah, I think it's definitely, it should not have been that simple to find food, but on the same value, it is a more lighthearted story. Generally speaking, it's a means to an end. It's not necessarily the focus of what they're doing.
No, but Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes is a movie I watched for the Night Stream Film Festival, and I've been like praising this movie all the hell, because it's an amazing movie. But the concept is people watch themselves in 2 minutes ahead of time, 2 minutes, 2 minutes in the future. And what makes the movie so fascinating is they take the concept, and it's not always about the main character and talking to himself. They actually expand upon it. It becomes much more of a story. And that's what I feel like you're talking about. Like, even though the concept's there, they find a way to expand it to make it much more, not just him talking to himself through the entire movie,
Right.
but much more to it that becomes much more out of control. And that's what been kind of nice to see in this TV series. Just
No, I agree.
I don't know.
I agreed 100%. I think it's, I don't know, like all the stuff that he runs into. The only thing that I really have an issue with is the thing that I know drives you up the wall too. Of a couple things.
So Henry Bemis wakes up and he's disheveled and he finds a. I'm really baffled by this moment. He finds a car in literally good shape, and I'm like, okay, I suspend my disbelief again. But there's these two moments, as we're aware, that you reminded me that we're going to talk about. Is this moment that I started being a little wondering of what they were trying to say. And I know it's in a world where technology has failed because he's unable to start the car, but I just don't buy that he would find a car. I really don't. I don't buy he would, try to start a car. I mean, what is the dude never, I've never seen, well, you never once see him drive in the episode, which maybe he does, but I don't feel like the car was ever needed. I don't feel like it feels like it's just trying to,
it's just there.
Yeah, it's just trying to pad out the episode. You gotta make it 23 minutes or something. But I don't know.
I wasn't sure about that either. It's like, with all the rubble on the ground, or the quote unquote rubble on the ground, he couldn't have gone far. It would have been fried. And not that there was any computer pieces in there at that point, but it still had electronics. It would have fried. It would have the EMP would have fried everything. It's like in, again, Walking Dead, where someone runs across a random vehicle and it starts up basically without issue. It's like, it's been sitting there for 2 years, but hey, the gas will still work, the battery will still jump. I mean,
yeah, that gas is definitely not eating through that car. I'm not to tell you what.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's definitely the most protected tank that they should just come up with an invention for today. So
it's like it's like the plane being built out of the black box material. I mean, but again, it's one of those things where the balance of, okay, you're talking about post-apocalyptic, so there do need to be some suspension of disbelief outside of the norms, allowed, because but then where does it become plot holes? There's always that question, and it is a good question to ask, because every series, every show, even time travel, same thing. Where do you draw the line of, okay, this makes sense within the our laws of time travel, but then this other thing, it doesn't work. How does it all run?
And it was actually going to my biggest problem of the episode. He finds a gun, which is kind of convenient. It's another convenience that's placed in this episode to kind of move the plot ahead.
Store. Back in the 50s.
Yeah, exactly. And this is like a really, really dark moment, even for 59. He sits down, he realizes at the end of his life, or he's thinking about the end of his life, and he actually puts the gun to his head. Now, the ending, I think, is actually, it works for what it's worth. But having this moment in here actually impacts the whole ending to the point where I don't feel that it feels like justified to have the segment in here. It feels like it's making this character so weak, so sad, so depressing, that when he puts the gun to his head, I think it takes all the interesting nature of the character out. It just takes this guy who is just going to kill himself, and he literally puts a gun to his head. I'm like, one, either I don't really pay attention to the episodes very often, or I don't remember him doing this, but I remember I'm watching this episode, I'm like, holy crap, they're actually doing that in a show in the 50s. But I just feel like it completely just shatters my whole concept of trying to root for this guy, because for a guy that has been beaten down so much, he's just going to now that he's by himself, he's just going to kill himself. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I felt this really took me out of the story. It was really a big of a problem. It doesn't take away from the episode, it just takes away from the concept of the story to me. So
no,
I mean, what do you think?
I had a hard time with this too, and not knowing first. I mean, obviously you can't know how long it's been since everything happened, and I'm sure post something like this, finding out that you're the last person around, you would be super like down. But he talks about the loneliness aspect, and it's like, it's been like 48 hours and this is where you find yourself. I don't know, like I can kind of see it from the perspective of, okay, basically the last man on earth. How do you deal with that? But then on the other side, it's like you're giving up that easy. Like you found, I mean, again, nuclear wasteland, but you found food, you found the basic stuff, and he didn't even like, oh, I'll never survive, what am I going to do with the rest of my days? He didn't think to go towards a library to start with, or he didn't think to go towards a place that might have books or whatever it might be. You seek out those things that help you to get through.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I don't have a problem with him finding a gun. It's very convenient. This whole episode is very convenient. A lot of things it does.
Yeah.
Maybe he picks up the gun, looks at it for a second, realizes that somehow he doesn't realize the library is right next to the sporting goods store, which doesn't make any sense. But maybe his mind's just out of whack. But he picks up the gun. Yeah, he looks at it, and then he realizes the library is right next to the sporting goods store, and then he puts down the gun. That's a perfect way to just kind of take that dark moment and just kind of, slowly, make you kind of justify what he may do. But they almost go through with it. They almost go to the point where he literally puts the gun to his head. And I just think it goes too far for an episode about a man who's been, beaten down. But like I said, he finds the public library, which leads into the most shocking thing of the episode. But I mean, I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. People may love that segment, may think it really fits the character, but like I said, pick up the gun.
Yeah, that aspect of it, I don't think we know enough about. And not that you have to know all their morals or anything, but he never said anything one way or the other besides the fact that he was a beat down character to start with. I don't think that he showed himself to be the kind of, like, he didn't show the tendencies beforehand that would say, okay, he's that far down that he's gonna, off himself. But I can see, I mean, given the fact that an H-bomb went off, he's clearly not found anybody. I can see it going that way, but for this episode, it doesn't fit what it's supposed to be. This is about a guy that likes to read, had he found the library, torn limb from limb, everything burnt to hell. He's mourning the loss of, the people in his life. He's mourning the loss of all of this knowledge. Then yeah, I could see him afterwards doing that. Like his glasses break, he goes and finds a gun. Then maybe, but to start with, I don't know. It didn't feel like it fit. It was
that's
an odd
the thing.
choice.
Like, yeah, and that's the thing. I get it when it comes to post-apocalyptic stories like The Walking Dead. A character like Negan was a completely different person before the zombie apocalypse happened. And I understand that somebody like Henry Bemis might be a completely different person after an apocalypse happened. But like you said, 48 hours, nothing's going to change in that 48 hours outside of just sanity maybe starting to go a little bit. But as we know, as this story is well known for, he finds the public library. He finds books. He finds what he loves, what the thing he truly loves, which is reading. And he starts naming off all the different books, and he's like, and then it fades to his book stacking. And I started laughing when I saw that because I started thinking of Ghostbusters when they're in the library. And and when I think Dan Aykroyd's character Ray says, man, look at this book stacking. And no, Ray goes, symmetrical book stacking. And Peter goes, yeah, they would never stack books like this. And I just thought symmetrical book stacking, which I thought was funny. But
yeah, totally. I enjoyed how like the works of Shakespeare were all together. It's like, oh, well, at least the H-bomb was nice enough to like, organize everything together because I knew that Bemis would be the last person alive.
Exactly. The H-bomb has Bemis intelligence.
Exactly. It had him in mind.
Yeah,
it shows him.
But he has all his books in symmetrical stacking, all January, February, March, April, May, all that good stuff. And some reason he takes a book, he sits down on the steps, and there's a big clock, which is very poignant in the idea of time and if it lasts and stuff. And he even says, and I wrote this down, he picks up the first book, smiles, he has all the time in the world now to read. And this is what he quotes, or this is a quote from him. There's time now, all the time I need, time enough at last. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if glasses, having glasses and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
There's a good chance you would, especially in apocalypse, you would make sure you take care of your glasses. But he drops his book, he looks down, he goes down to pick up the book, and this is when the most famous thing happens: his glasses drop, the lenses break. Now, like I said, if you're in an apocalyptic scenario, you might want to take care of your glasses, especially a guy that has literally no vision.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of a double entendre. No vision. um but this is where, and I'll just kind of close out the episode and we'll talk about it, or close out the actual thing. He starts freaking out. He goes, no, that's not fair. We had all the time in the world, blah blah blah. And I'll talk about closing narration after we're done talking. But what I think makes the ending so powerful and so unique, but also so problematic, is it literally makes the character the most depressing character in the history of cinema. This is a character that was beaten down and beaten down and beaten down. He finally gets what he wants, and then he's beaten down again. And I'm pretty sure somehow, I'm sure he might find a way to build, since it's so convenient. Maybe there's another pair of glasses laying around. It's just it makes it for such a sad affair. It makes it for such a sad state of situation. It makes it almost like, this guy who was abused by his wife and his bank teller manager now has to suffer the rest of his life or something that just, I don't know, maybe because life's not fair, but it's just such an amazing, incredible moment, but such a hard moment to kind of sit through. And I know that's what Rod Serlings was going for, but I mean, it's such a conflicting type of thing.
Yeah, I felt the same way. It's like, obviously with a lot of these guys, like Gabe Claus,
Yeah.
he was just a dick of a person. Like, he got what he deserved, 100%. What did Bemis do to deserve that ending? Like, I just
absolutely
like
nothing.
There was nothing. Yeah, and I know, again, it could be the whole life's not fair thing, but the one thing that was consistent to me for the back half of the show was, to some extent, I wrote down, he gives up too easy. Like, obviously with the car, you could only do so much with it. He was going to give up his life after, he's like, oh, I'm so lonely. The 48 hours or whatever it was, between when everything happened, which, again, circumstances of the apocalypse aside, that plays in, but there was that level with it. And then this, it's like, I've never seen glasses. I've had glasses like most of my life. I've never seen glasses break that easily from that short of a fall. Like, holy shit.
I mean, to be fair, like, I don't know, maybe the glasses in the 50s were very fragile, but you're right. It's like, I'm pretty sure you could drop your glasses from, however tall you are to your, to the ground. Like if you're getting in your car or something, I'm pretty sure they're not going to break. I mean, unless that concrete,
not to that extent. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just that makes a lot of sense. It's a problem. It's like, but they have to make this guy so down at the end. It was just,
but I just like,
crazy.
What was I do wonder, and I'm sure it says it someplace, but what was Rod Serling going for with this? Like, you got this super bookish guy, everyone was against him reading. Fine. You know what? You need to have balance. You got to have, more than that. They're so starved for the ability to read. Obviously, he did whatever he could to, even sacrificing his job to be able to read. But then you come to this point and you get all these books that survive this massive fire and brimstone moment.
Rising from the sky.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And dude has heaven, and all of a sudden he's in hell because he can't see.
Well, I have this theme that's on the Wikipedia page, and this is where they say Rod Serling was going with this. It says, although the overriding message may seem to be careful what you wish for, you might just get it. There are other themes throughout this episode as well. Among those is the question of solitude versus loneliness, as embodied by Bemis's moment of near suicide, which is, I get the whole loneliness and solitude because I've dealt with loneliness. It's not a very fun thing, which as we all know, especially in the pandemic.
Yeah.
It says, additionally, the portrayal of societal attitudes towards books speaks to the contemporary decline of traditional literature and how, given enough time, reading may become a relic of the past. At the same time, the ending punishes Bemis for his antisocial behavior and his greatest desire is thwarted. Ron Serling concluded. Oh, actually, that's part of the ending. But I mean, I guess is that kind of answer the question?
I guess I can see the antisocial aspect of it, but being that he was sort of driven to that, and maybe he was like that before too, because obviously dude liked to read. But again, it's that ability to, I mean, we all temper our desires. Like, I would love to do YouTube stuff all the time, but I can't because I have to earn a living. I have to, you have to get out and do other things. If you just did YouTube, you'd go insane. Or if you just played video games, that's not healthy. If you just ate, it's not healthy. If you just watch movies, it's not healthy. And you have to have balance. But I don't know. The punishment, to my mind, doesn't fit the crime. given every
Yeah.
other circumstance.
Right. And this might not answer the question. It's an interesting also theme as well. It says in the era of the internet and ebooks, the irony depicted in Time Enough at Last has an information age counterpart. According to Weston Ochis, I don't know if I pronounced that, of Storytellers Unplugged, as Ochis points out, when Bemis becomes the last person on Earth, he finally has time to read with all his books at his fingertips, and the only impediment is technology, where his medium, of course, his glasses, breaks. In a hypothetical world where all books are published electronically, Ochis observes readers will be only a lightning, quote unquote, only lightning strikes, a faulty switch, a sleepy workman on a natural disaster away from becoming Henry Bemis at the end of the world. That is, a power outage has a potential to give them to the time to read. Yeah, like Bemis, they too would lose their medium for accessing their books, namely a computer.
Yeah, you
I
could
mean,
even look at that. You could even look at
yeah.
that like during the pandemic, you had a lot of people that, were laid off. You had time to do the things you wanted to do, but you were depressed or you were dealing with other stuff.
Yeah.
You didn't have the desire. Because how many people that we knew that did videos didn't do any more videos because of the state of everything? I mean, the two go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
You look at I can't remember, this happened back in like early 2000s, but there was a power plant in Cleveland that knocked out power in New York City,
Mhm.
and you learned
The
about like
brownout.
yeah, is that what it's called?
I think so, yeah.
So it's the same thing, like even though they're glasses, and I think it's a little too depressing in its nature, the glasses are like, if we had a power outage or lost internet, some reason, we lose our ability to do what, not only what makes us happy, but it kind of makes the world go into chaos.
Yeah.
And Bemis is a justification for chaos at the end of the story, which is really crazy to think about. But
Yeah,
like I
very
said,
much.
you probably agree. I get what they're saying. I just think, I don't know, in the
Glasses
end,
aren't
I
really
think
technology. Like glasses have been
yeah,
around since like the Middle Ages at least, and before that there was probably other stuff. Like they are technology, but they're not really technology.
I think they meant like the sense, like because he lost his glasses, he wasn't able to do anything.
Ah, yeah,
Basically,
yeah, that's true.
I think that's what they're going through. I think the ending would have worked a lot better if the guy hadn't put the gun to his head. I think that's where it completely like
Yeah, it
throws me
wasn't
off.
needed. I mean, I
Yeah.
think I get what they were going for, but I would have, and I know it wouldn't have been as climactic, but
Mm.
if I would have done it, it would have been the last thing that he did, trying to decide how to do it, because he lost the thing. He lost his people, lost his
Mm.
world, but he loved books above and beyond everything else. And to lose the ability to do that, then I could see going that route. But before that, it wasn't needed per se, other than to show, what, I'm the last guy on earth, man. I'm not sticking around because this is terrible.
And it's not to take. It's not to. I should paraphrase this, or preface this, or whatever you want to call it. It's not to say that I don't love this ending. I don't love this episode, because I do.
Oh, it's a great
It's just
episode.
when you break it down, there is a lot of inconsistencies and problems
Yeah.
that I feel are a little too unjustified for a character that is in essence the most broken down character. I don't know about the most broken down character of the series, but he might just be the most broken down character of the series, that just completely has everything stacked against him. And we all feel that way. We all feel like everything's stacked against us, but my God, this poor man.
Well, it's like if you've ever read the Mocking or the Hunger Games series with Katniss, the stuff that happens to her in that final book, like everything is taken away from her. Like she is, like, you almost go, okay, did the author not like her creation because of all the stuff that she goes through? Like it's insane, and I'm sure that there's reasons for it that probably make great sense that I haven't looked into. But I'm a casual fan, but it's like, damn.
Well,
Dude.
it's funny.
So
Exactly. And I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, it's all right.
But it's the same thing with like Harry. It's not actually, if you want a good justification for this, like Harry Potter, you look at the kid who's been sorely broken down and beaten down and mistreated by his aunt and uncle, lost his parents at an early age. But they use that as a starting point, as a jumping off point to a much larger world, to a much larger place, to allowing this kid, even though he has to deal with Voldemort, which is that's a rough situation, he still has
Every year.
yeah, exactly. He still has a support unit, a support group. Yes, he loses people along the way, but you really get a justification that even though he's beaten down and he has to deal with issues, that there are people that will stand behind him, that will be there for him. And I don't get that. I don't get that here. And Hunger Games, her mother, Katniss's mother, has serious issues. Her sister is, on the fringes of, what she is in the beginning of the series. But I think Harry Potter is a great look into a beaten down character who finally gets, everything he wanted at the end. He just has to, he doesn't want to commit suicide and stuff like that. That's just not be really disturbing, actually. It'd be interesting. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if you feel the same way about that or not. That's just
I mean,
I've
I've already stated my opinion. Given the state of the world, being that he is in theory the last guy on Earth, I mean, I could see not wanting to stick around because, I mean, from the perspective of just, you're it. There's no one else there. But then, there's the what if something would happen? What if I get hurt? I mean, everything that's raised in any apocalyptic movie or TV show or literature or whatever across time, yes, there's food, but what if the food runs out? What if I get hurt? What if, all of these things? There's no one to talk to. There's no one to, and obviously it's not that the Twilight Zone, the base episodes are not that deep. But they're here for us to look at and to, put our own spin on and say, no, this is what we see. So yeah, I don't, given that position, I mean, the devastation of losing everything. I mean, I could see looking, the gun would look pretty appetizing. But having said that, with this kind of an episode, knowing where it's going, I think it felt out of place.
Yeah, and I'll push back a little bit. I do think some of the episodes get really deep in their subject matter, like the monsters you do on Maple Street, and the one episode about the black cloud that comes over when they execute an African American guy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just feels like, on top of that, like if you think about it, how far did this destruction happen? Like, did the whole country get wiped out? Is there portions of the country where there are people still alive? I mean, I don't know. It's just
really
it's a weird.
say. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess you have to just look at it, take it for what it's worth. But
right, and we don't know how far he traveled. Like, we know he went past his house. We know, relatively speaking, he's obviously in a little bit larger place, but beyond that, we have no idea how far he traveled. I mean, they said that he walked around for 8 hours, which through a minefield of, broken rubble and everything else, you're not going to get, 20 miles up the road, but who knows? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess if the car was working, he'd been able to get farther, but
yeah,
they didn't want that to happen.
Like you say, that I mean, besides I tried a car, it didn't start. I mean, beyond that basic stuff, you really can't say much on that. I think it was just examples. It's like, with Alicia and Corey last week, that there was that thing of, okay, well, they're in this place. We see them hanging out. We see them playing chess, and that's supposed to represent their entire relationship, give us, 11 months worth of, experiences. So.
All right. Yeah. And like I said earlier, this episode is much more structured properly than that episode. So.
Very much
so. But let me do the closing narrations and we'll talk a little bit more. Rod Serlings says the best laid plans of Mice and Men. Of course, he was in Mice and Men, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. That is cool.
And the best laid plans of Mice and Men and Henry Bemis. I actually really like what he says, but the small man in the glasses who won nothing but time, Henry Bemis, now just a part of the smashed landscape, just a piece of the rubble, just a fragment of what man has deeded him to himself, Mr. Henry Bemis in the Twilight Zone. What makes that, to me personally, so kind of interesting and kind of poetic is this man is now just part of everything that has gone wrong in this world, and he's now a man just kind of completely broken, and he's going to be part of the world that has to repair itself, and he's just a piece of the rubble. He's just now a guy just at nothing.
No, agreed. I think you could definitely, like, when his ability to read was taken away, I mean, that was kind of his core, and to lose that, he did shatter.
Really interesting to think about. Just what would you do in this situation? Like, let's say this scenario played out, this exact scenario. Let's say it doesn't have to be books, but would you go the same route? Like, I mean, we talked about what we thought of the episode for a pretty good amount of time, but after watching this episode, let's say you were put in this scenario, like, would you see yourself playing it out the same way? Would you be a little smarter? I mean, how would you handle this situation? Like, I
Well,
keep thinking about like, how would I handle this situation?
oh yeah. Well, I think anything like this, like watching Walking Dead 28 days later, I mean, pick any post-apocalyptic thing. And I think it is incredibly a hard genre to watch or to read about, because in addition to all the normal stuff, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to stay healthy, you have to not break anything. You have this additional burden of having to find food, of all these other things. I mean, it does add an element of difficulty to what can be difficult to start with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like tracking down the things that you need, all this stuff. He had it pretty simply, oh, hey, here's a grocery store, here's shelves of food left over from this grocery store, and not irradiated. The inability to travel is one thing, but the rest, I mean, yeah, I guess it's pretty straightforward. So I don't know, like, I'd like to hope you'd be smart about it and kind of, get your camp set and stuff, but who knows? I mean,
Well, that's a funny thing. We're talking about a guy who literally doesn't think for himself half the time. It's always his wife. And I'm looking at this page and it says anti-electro, like
anti-intellectual.
Thank you, anti-intellectualism.
Mhm.
And we're dealing with that right now. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna beat around the bush. It's very prescient what's going on with the way schooling's going on. But I mean, if you think about it, this guy literally was a broken down man who really never had to deal with like hard case scenarios outside of his wife berating him for reading a book. But he also had to deal with abusive, people, and him having to deal with this world where it's just him by himself. Yes, he starts making choices for his own, but I like I said, that's where you get into the conflicting nature. He's a guy that has to sort of fend for himself, and he's never really had to do that, I guess.
Yeah. He's
If that
faced
makes
with a
any
lot
sense.
of things that he allowed himself to some extent to be put into the position where he couldn't make decisions. So when he was forced back into the thing of not of having to make his own decisions, he ends up
Yeah.
with a gun to his head.
And and I'm not trying to get dark, but maybe he was like to treat like this his whole life. I mean, we don't know, but
Yeah, who
it
knows?
could be like he married his mom type of situation. But
Well, and that's the thing too.
um,
Like, we're only, as it's easy to say, but we're presented with this story. There's no, like,
exactly.
it's not like Star Wars where there's like, 5 books that tell you the background of all these things that we know about in the greater, Star Wars universe. We just have
Right.
this. And that's the great
Right.
and the terrible thing about anthologies.
Yeah, that's sometimes even if, like, when you look at, like you said, anthologies, you can kind of find stuff that you can talk about that can be, unique and interesting, but has some depth to it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and you're talking
Uh,
about, and not that the 50s were simple, but
no, they definitely weren't.
but no, but you know what I mean, like the
Yeah.
simplicity of the stories, they didn't need to be like, people talked about them and they had discussions, but we're looking at it in a much deeper way than anyone but Serling himself would have, and maybe the actors would have really done it at that point.
If you think about, families in the 50s, you see a story about a man who's bookish and nerdish, who goes in a vault, H bomb explodes, biggest fear about, bombs going off in the United States, finds a library, and then loses glasses. I mean, most people just think about that story. That's why, the concept of being in, the top 25 moments in television of all time is that simple fact that, people look at it as this guy wanted to read and he can't read, and now he's stuck without reading. So we're going way in depth to the concepts and ideas and theories.
Absolutely.
But if you look at it on a more surface level, it's a much more harrowing tale of a guy who wanted just one thing. So
right. Well, and we can all relate to it because, like, again, like you say, the electricity goes out, 9/10 of your entertainment goes away. Your car won't start, your ability to travel goes away. Your air conditioning goes out in the summer, your ability to keep cool goes away. It's one small thing affects everything.
Exactly. And like you said, Serling considers this one of his favorite episodes, on top of an episode that I've been hearing a billion times already, which is kind of impressive because I never thought this was like an episode I enjoyed as much, but The Invaders with Agnes Moorehead. But apparently these are his 2 favorite episodes. But
Oh, nice.
yeah, I wonder. This is one of those episodes I would love. I know Rod Serling was probably not the the most talkative to journalists and stuff, or maybe he was, I don't know. But I would love to sit him down and just kind of talk about an episode like this, about like his, justifications for why he took Henry Bemis the way he did, how he, felt that it was, the concepts and ideas about using like H-bomb and intellectualism and stuff like that. And just talking about other stories, but this would be one that, like Obsolete Man, like what is it about these episodes that really drove him to write what he did? And we go off like what writers and storytellers talk about what they interviewed him about, but sometimes they there's stuff that you want to talk to them about that you can't talk to them about, and there's stuff that you never be able to find out. But
yeah, well, and I think too a lot that he pulled from this was from that story too. Like what made him choose the story, I'm not sure, but I think it did. He would, like we've said, he's progressive. He knew he could see things about his time and looking forward. And I do think that plays into his choices on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like you look at somebody like J.R.R. Tolkien, who was in the military, and he looked at a world that was complete chaos, and how military used the world to benefit from. And that's what the Lord of the Rings is about military propaganda and excuses and stuff like that. And I mean, there's much more to it, but Rod Serlings I'm assuming he used his life experiences to write these stories, and felt they were, as long as he could make them interesting and kind of poetic in a lot of ways, he found good ways to write them, and it is very much a life experience type of thing. So
yeah, very much so.
So with that said, just overall, would you still consider this? I mean, we'll get into a second, like the Twilight Zone ranking, but outside of the issues, outside of the things we talked about, would you still consider this like one of the great Twilight Zone episodes?
Oh, totally. I think like there are those bits that stand out to us, and I keep referencing Star Wars, but like Star Wars here, you think like where totally, like where Luke stands and in the distance is the two sunsets, like that is an image that sticks with you,
right.
That end of time, that will be one of those great iconic moments. The moment at the end of this episode where he loses his glasses, whatever critiques go around that is still a massive moment, and it's something that people can relate to on a variety of levels. So yeah, this will always be a great episode, if nothing else for that reason.
Yeah, and I think even though I was a little hard on it, a little critical on it, I still think it's an episode that has a lot to say about a lot of the stuff we're still dealing with today, how we view everything. And I think that's an incredible way to write a story. And when you're writing something from 1959 that still resonates in 2021, you've done your job. Really, you've done your job pretty well. So as we kind of conclude this episode, I think we both are in agreement. It's a great episode. It plays well. Burgess Meredith, definitely.
Oh, Burgess Meredith is the best.
Fantastic.
Like, he's so good. Like whether you're talking Penguin or Mick or this, all the episodes he plays, and there's a reason he was brought back for 4 episodes, because he plays the role so well.
And then does the voiceover for the movie, which is awesome.
Exactly.
It's also funny, I didn't bring up this trivia, but apparently 2 pairs of glasses were used. One that was close up so that they could get like how big his eyes were, and then there was the far away glasses that were just, I think,
glass lenses,
magnified or whatever, which is so you could see what he was doing, which would be funny if he was like stumbling around. It'd be kind of amazing. But with that said, I'm going to give my honest opinion. We're going to go through the Twilight Zone list, the top rankings and stuff like that. Yeah. I would honestly leave Walking Distance at number 1 and then put this at number 2. But what do you think?
Because it's Walking Distance, and then right now One for the Angels is 2, right?
Yeah. Okay. I know I know you love One for the Angels.
I think
I still think it's a great episode.
No, I agree. I think that 2 makes sense for this.
Mm-hmm.
Walking Distance does have more of a overall, it feels like a more complete episode front to back. Like I think that 2 sounds like a good plan. Like that, like this and One for the Angels are pretty close in, but yeah.
See, the thing I was thinking about was watching this episode is how much of an impact Walking Distance had on me when I was watching. I was like, this episode is completely potent with what it's trying to do, especially about a man who's reliving his. But I think some of the problems with Time Enough at Last that we were bringing up, kind of, it doesn't take away from the episode being great because we were putting it at number 2, but I think it just below Walking Distance. I think it's Just Above One for the Angels, which has a really great moment with Mr. Death and
Oh yeah.
whatever the
See, and I
character
think
is.
it's kind of an interesting nostalgia piece because like
Mhm.
the themes of nostalgia in Walking Distance relate to the way that people remember Time Enough at Last from a real world perspective. Like the nostalgia for that episode, I think to some extent outweigh the episode. That's not taking away from the episode because the episode is incredible. But I do think
Yeah,
that
no,
plays in. So
absolutely. Yeah. I and like I said, these 8 episodes outside no, I'm just, these 8 episodes, including 16mm Shrine, are still better than
really,
90 are still
really.
better than 90% of the TV that comes
All
out
right,
even
getting
today.
that on a
So
t-shirt for you too to wear around.
so with with that said, Time Enough at Last is going to be at number 2. Don't take away from us not liking the episode.
No, of
I
course
think
not.
Walking Distance is better. So
Yeah.
so number 1 is still Walking Distance. Number 8 is still the 16mm Shrine, which I'm sure at some point will be dethroned. Because I'm sure there's another episode that's worse. Like
There's a couple, like the looking glass or the looking pool one.
yeah,
That's
the
way
Bewitching
down the
Pool.
road, but yeah.
Yeah, that's like that's not
That
no, that's the
voice,
last episode.
that
That's the last
voiceover
episode of the
just
series.
does me in every time. Oh my god.
I'm not a huge fan of the Ring a Ding Girl either, so we'll talk
I don't
about that
remember that
eventually.
one.
I think it's the one with the I may be mixing up the episode, but it's the one where the child's talking to their dead grandmother or something like that.
Oh yeah.
With that said, so that's our list for the top, for the so far with Twilight Zone. The next episode is an episode I don't remember at all. It's called Perchance the Dream. It's the first episode written not by Rod Serlings, but written by Charles Beaumont, based off a story from his. So it makes sense that he would allow him to write it. And I'm sure as we talked about, they're good friends. But I don't remember this episode at all. It's surprising. Usually I can remember something about it, but there's nothing about this. It's been speculated that this episode in the novella, which spawned it, served as Wes Craven's inspiration for Nightmare on Elm Street. Interesting,
nice.
but we'll talk about that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But do you know this episode at all?
I'm terrible with just the names. Like if I looked at the synopsis, I could probably tell you, but
right. But it has Richard
when we
Conte
get
in
there.
it. Yeah. So it'll be a couple weeks before we actually get there, as we're recording. But so with that said, that'll do it. That'll be our take on Time Enough at Last. Still a very good episode. So thank you for checking it out. Triv, as we always do, where can they find your content, all that good stuff?
Well, you can find me sitting here with this cup that I still don't know what's in. If you go to the computer behind me, though, you can go check me out on YouTube at Trivial Theater, and that's ER, not RE, because generally speaking, I'm not that fancy. You can also find me on Twitter at trivia_chick.
Awesome. And as this is recording, she put out a video with recent guest host Jacob Anders reviews about Freaked. What an interesting movie that is.
Yeah, several five-finger dick jokes for some reason. I'm still not
exactly.
sure.
There is many dick jokes in that.
Yes,
so
but
look forward to that. So but anyways, you can reach me at Movie Emporium on Twitter, Movie Emporium on YouTube. I'm right now, as a recording this video, I'm working on Night Stream Film Festival content. So check out for that. Should have everything done by the time this opens or this post. But yeah, with that said, we'll end the Fifth Dimension Twilight Zone podcast episode, which is season 1, episode 8, which is Time Enough at Last. And we'll see you next time in the Twilight Zone. Peace out, guys.
Take care. We out.